Hey, this is Nick G and welcome to Better Commander. Brothers War has been a really mixed bag so far, but I'll tell you one thing. This is the cheapest I've seen some of these artifacts in a long time. A long time ago, in a galaxy far away, 1999 or so, I pulled a memory jar out of a pack. Back then I knew nothing, I just thought it was a really cool artifact. Back then the border on artifacts was brown, and that's the way we liked it. I have no idea why they changed it honestly. Brown was distinctive, easily distinguished from other card types, and they look like something you find in a dusty antique shop. So after all that design nonsense and the redesigns, people are going crazy for retro frames. They're like, hey bro, these look awesome, check them out. I was like, I know man, I was there when they were brown, dude. I started my Magic career in Browntown. So let's take a deep dive into the Commander singles you might want to pick up from these retro border artifacts. But first take a moment to smash the like button. Oh, go easy on it. Jeepers, you smashed it too hard, brother. Gently depress the subscribe button, then take a time out, okay? Alright, first up is Mox Amber. I do not have one of these cards, and I don't plan on buying one. I think this type of fast mana is incredibly powerful, but I'm not spending $60 for one of these, and that's what the price was right after Dominaria was released. But now you can get the retro frame for $25 right now, and if you want one, that's decently cheap. And the schematic version was going for about $35. Alright, next up on the list we have Wormcoil Engine. I think this card is slightly overrated, but there's no denying it's a powerful, efficient beater that can be recurred, sacrificed, and generally abused because of that dies trigger. You might not know this, but it combos with Ashnod's Altar and Nim Deathmantle. Alright, what you do is you activate Ashnod's Altar by sacrificing Wormcoil Engine, adding colorless. Wormcoil Engine dies, triggering itself and Nim Deathmantle. Resolve the Wormcoil Engine's triggers first, creating a 3/3 worm with Death Touch and a 3/3 worm with lifelink. Hold priority. Activate Ashnod's Altar by sacrificing one of the worm tokens, adding colorless. Resolve Nim Deathmantle's trigger, causing you to pay for to return Wormcoil Engine from your graveyard to the battlefield and attach Nim Deathmantle to it. Rinse and repeat, buddy. The schematic version is $17, and the retro frame normal art is an astounding $10. I've never seen that cheaper, but who knows, the world is imploding. Alright, Ramos Dragon Engine, come on. 6 generic mana for a legendary artifact creature dragon. It's a 4/4 with flying. Whenever you cast a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Ramos Dragon Engine for each of that spell's colors. Remove 5 +1/+1 counters from Ramos, add, I'm not going to read all that, but basically it's 10 mana, 2 of each color. Activate only once each turn. Right after Dominaria United released, the Commander 2017 version was $50 or so. The only other reprint was $40, which was the Commander Legends Etched Foil, which looked like dog do. The schematic version is $9 right now, and the retro border is selling on TCG Player for $4. If you ever wanted a sweet 5-color Dragon Commander, check it out. I had a Ramos Mutate deck that was incredibly fun. Aether Flux Reservoir is a combo Commander payoff staple. This rewards storm decks and gives you the ability to ping an entire table if you can go off with it. Schematic is $6.50 and the retro frame is $4. Helm of the Host is another Commander combo engine in various Commander decks. Depending on the time frame and version, this has been as high as $30, and the list version was hovering around $14. Both versions in the retro frame are around $4 to $5. That's pretty cheap if you need one. Mystic Forge is 4 generic mana for an artifact. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast artifact spells and colorless spells from the top of your library. It has tap, pay 1 life. Exile the top card of your library. This also has a few combos. Sensei's Divining Top and any artifact cost reducer. You can draw your whole deck. This has had a few recent reprints, including one in the Warhammer 40k decks. Both Brothers War retro versions are under $5. Unwinding Clock. This was another one that was $40, then had a couple reprints. Schematic version is $3.50 and the retro border is $2.50. This is a fantastic card in an artifact deck. I think the price just kind of got high because it hadn't had any reprints. Anybody remember Phantasm? It was a horror movie from the 1980s and this guy threw around these orbs with spikes on them. Anyway, this thing is a mill machine. This Mesmeric Orb, 2 generic mana for an artifact. Whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent controller mills a card. Listen, this was $40 in the past for the Mirrodin version. It's now under $4 for either Brothers War version that suits your fancy. Altar of Dementia, 2 generic mana for an artifact. Sacrifice a creature. Target player mills cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power. This is efficient, instant speed mill that can hit either your opponents or yourself. I love this in Varina. I love it in any mill deck, whether it be self-mill or just mill. Combo this with Consuming Aberration and you're in good shape. Instant speed sacrifice is always in demand. Look at this art, dude. This is fantastic. It's just grandpa taking a nap. Speaking of instant speed sacrifice outlets, you got Ashnod's Altar. This thing is 3 generic mana for an artifact. Sacrifice creature at colorless. This is like $4 and change for the schematic version, buddy. Prior to this reprint, the cheapest version was around $11. Both the schematic, which has fantastic art, look at this art, it's just a dude with no nose on it, and the retro border regular art are under $5. Alright, Thorn of Amethyst is 2 generic mana for an artifact. Non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. Thorn of Amethyst, this is just a thorn in the side of anyone not playing a creature-based deck. This would go great in the artifact creature decks that are sprouting up around the various Urzas and Mishras. Prior to this reprint, due to the fact that there was only one printing in Lorwyn, this crested at $30. It's now $3 for either version. And you go, yo, Platinum Angel. 7 generic mana for an artifact creature. It's an angel. It's a 4/4 with flying. You can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. She's the apex of the Artificer's Craft, the spirit of the divine called out of base metal. Despite 10 prior printings, Platinum Angel was hovering around $10, so the current price of under $3 seems pretty good to me, buddy. Chromatic Lantern, 3 generic mana for an artifact. Lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. It also has tap, add 1 mana of any color itself. So this is also at a fair number of reprints, most recently in the Warhammer decks, but if it suits your fancy, the schematic version is $3. Listen, I know Josh Lee Kwai doesn't appreciate this card. He thinks it's garbage, brother, but I run it in a fair amount of commander decks, especially 4 5-color decks. Staff of Domination. This is an awesome card. I'm going to read it to you because it's really awesome, brother. 3 generic mana for an artifact. 1, untap Staff of Domination. 2 and tap, you gain 1 life. Don't care about that. 3 and tap, untap target creature. 4 and tap, tap target creature. 5 and tap, draw a card. So basically this thing does it all. And if you have infinite mana, you can draw your entire deck. I have this in a couple decks where I generate infinite colorless mana. I can't believe this was once $60 for the 5th Dawn printing, and it's all the way down to $2 right now for the schematic version. Pick them up while supplies last. Gilded Lotus, dude. This was a $5 card forever. It's now under $1 for either retro frame version. Mind's Eye used to be a commander staple for card draw and Boros, but those days are gone, my friends. If you want this effect, it's cheaper than it's ever been, but I think this has kind of been power crept out of the format. The schematic version's about $3. This is a powerful effect, though costly at 5 mana. But if you're in an artifact deck with lots of cost reducers, this just kind of sits there and generates value and converts excess mana into card advantage. Listen, your mileage may vary. Alright, I just wanted to mention one more card. This thing's under $1. Semblance Anvil, 3 generic mana for an artifact. Imprint. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile a non-land card from your hand. Spells that share a card type with the exile card cost 2 less to cast. So I used to have this deck with Jor Kadeen the Prevailer. It was artifact, creatures, metalcraft, all that stuff. And I would stick a little mirror behind Semblance Anvil, and then all my artifacts and all my creatures cost 2 less to cast. So I was getting free mirrors and I was getting free stuff. And it was awesome. And those were the good old days, brother. So those are the highlights. I'm not going to go through each one because there are literally about 33 more of them. Say what you want about Wizards or this set or their suspect business practices, they really nailed the retro artifacts. There are so many good reprints for Commander and the art is awesome. Some of these had inflated price tags due to single printing. Others had many printings but high demand, so I tried to highlight that information for you when I could. Thanks for joining me on my journey through the heart of the cards. This is Nicky G from Better Commander, signing off.